In the world of real estate, pricing your home is paramount to resulting in a successful sale and also the most profitable sale. However, it remains one of those factors that sellers and some agents too really still struggle with. So today I'm going to delve into just what we look at. It's going to be a high overview, of course, of the factors we look at when we're arriving at price for a home. Hi, I'm Jennifer Queen with the Jennifer Queen team and RE/MAX Professionals, and without getting too braggy about things today, I just want to say that I am, I guess, what you could call a seasoned realtor now, although I also feel like that makes me sound like I've been at it for way too long. But essentially, I've sold thousands of homes in my career, so I have run the gamut, and I have learned both the hard way about pricing incorrectly, and I've also seen the successes when a house is priced correctly. So with that background in mind, I want to delve into some key factors that you and your realtor are going to be looking at when you're arriving at a listing price for your home. At the end of the day, pricing a home is not just science, there's also an art to it. So there's the statistical facts that we look at, but there's also some finessing of those facts and honestly human emotion and the role that plays in a buyer's decision-making process. So taking that all into account is important in arriving at value. But I'll give you kind of the basic factors that we look at to begin with, and then of course if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. So the first thing I'm sure that your realtor is going to do is they're going to look at the market dynamics. And if they're an active realtor, they don't even have to look at this. They can tell you exactly what is going on in the market. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Is it a balanced market? What are the average days on market? What are the absorption rates? A variety of factors. What it all boils down to essentially though is really the basics of economics. If anybody took Economics 101, you know it's the principle of supply versus demand. If there's too much supply, then of course it becomes more of a buyer's market because buyers now have options and they don't need to get in these crazy bidding wars. If it's balanced, that's great. We're seeing decent absorption rates, which means what is hitting the market is selling through in theory. And then in a seller's market, that demand far outweighs supply, which we saw throughout the pandemic when there just weren't enough houses to go around and bidding wars ran rampant. Now, for those that are looking specifically at the Winnipeg market, Winnipeg for the last 2 decades, even though it might have felt like there were periods in which this was not true, but statistically speaking, Winnipeg has been a seller's market 2 decades now. The way we determine that is looking at the absorption rates, so the rate of sell-through of homes on the market, the average days on market. We have historically been trending well under 90 days, which is another factor that puts us into that seller's market category. And also the terms that sellers are getting. So those list price to sale price ratios. Those are all factors we look at when we're kind of trying to describe the market and what would liken our market here to that of a seller's market. So step 1, you've already evaluated the market dynamics. Step 2, now we're going to look at the comparable sales. But if you're hiring a realtor to come in and look at your home, they're going to prepare what we call, at least locally, a comparative market analysis. It's similar in some theories to an appraisal. However, it is not an appraisal. So if you are specifically looking for an appraisal, that is something different that you will need to get from a certified appraiser. A comparative market analysis is still pulling comps, looking at what your competitors have done, what they've sold for, what they've listed for, what the features of their home were, and various aspects, and comparing your home against it. But a full-blown appraisal is a little bit different. There's some cost analysis as well as comparable sales in there too. So if your bank or you're in a situation where somebody has specifically asked you for an appraisal, then that situation is different from what I'm describing here. So I just want to be clear about that. So the things we look at when we are doing our comparable analysis is we are looking at a number of factors. So similar homes to yours. So what makes a home similar? A variety of factors, and sometimes it depends on area, size of house, frequency with the listings are entered. Sometimes we'll have a lot of comparables to pull from and compare to. Sometimes we have to make some adjustments if there aren't a great deal of comparables. Ideally in Winnipeg, we are looking at most recent comparables. In the last few years, I have actually shortened my window from 6 months of market history, to really 3 months, because the market changed so rapidly through the pandemic. However, now I'm seeing us trending more to the 6 month being acceptable again. What I will say though is we are looking at square footage of the property, age of construction, basement and basement development, garages, size of the lot, and then of course upgrades and other factors. In pulling all of that information, we're at least able to determine a price range. Now, this is where the art comes in though, because some people think, well, I have a new roof, that house did not, that therefore makes my house worth more. Not necessarily. It depends on the area, it depends on the features of the home. Some things do add value in some areas, some things do not add value. Some things actually take away from value. I wouldn't say usually the roof is an example, but there are features within some homes that will detract value. So some people might have added an $80,000 pool to a small bungalow, which means there's no yard left. Sometimes that takes away value. So it's kind of knowing what adds value in specific areas and how that is perceived in the typical buyer's mind who would be looking for a home like yours. Now, some sellers really enjoy getting into the process with me. Some sellers want me to tell them what their house is worth, and that's it. They don't really want to look at the comps. We always provide a booklet with the comps, but there are times where I can tell they have not even reviewed it. But what I will say is if you're one of those analytical people that really enjoys kind of looking through the numbers, making your own assessments, we actually do have worksheets we've assembled for people so that they can kind of work through it on their own. I'll attach a link to it in the comments below. But essentially, it's a worksheet to work through. It helps you pull comps from your neighborhood, assess similarities, look at the differences, and kind of put it all into a spreadsheet format. I really appreciate it, actually. For this purpose, we on our team have actually put together a guide, ultimate pricing guide for a home for sale. So essentially it kind of goes over what impacts home's value, how to determine your price, and then it also takes into account, gives the CMA, so comparative market analysis, which I talked about, and then a home pricing worksheet that you can kind of work through. So I'll add a link to that in the comments section below. Be sure to hit me up there if you want a copy. If you don't, all good. I totally get it. Realtors are happy to provide this analysis for you. Don't feel like you have to do this. This is more for the people that enjoy arriving at value on their own terms and then assessing that with you. Everybody's different. Everybody can process the information differently, so don't feel bad if you do or don't want that. So step 3, we've talked about the comparables, we've talked about the market, but step 3 is now getting deep into the upgrades or list of repairs. So hopefully you're in the boat of you're the one with all the upgrades and you're going to get to recoup the value from those upgrades. So a lot of the time, if we are going into a home and it is a substantial home with a very nicely finished walkout basement, something that has been substantially done, that adds us a lot of money to the bottom line. However, if we're going into a smaller home with an unfinished basement, the adjustment is smaller. So knowing your buyer is really important here, knowing what they value, what they are willing to pay more for, and what will detract from list price too if it's not addressed is also important. Repairs are also something that we need to address at this point too. If your house is showing a significant amount of wear and tear, it's looking a little run down, it's stuff that buyers are going to pick up upon when they're approaching your home. Perhaps, I keep going back to the shingles, but it's the easiest reference. Perhaps your shingles are curling up and they're going to need to be redone fairly soon. This is something that we have to make a negative adjustment for. Now, just how negative? That's the part that gets really tricky, because say you know your neighbor down the street just had theirs redone for around, say, $7,000. Sounds good. However, unless you're providing that information via a quote from a reputable company to the buyer, expect some worst case scenario guessing. Expect the hit of $10,000 on list price for that. Rough rule of thumb, if you can't do the work, ideally first case scenario, you do repairs so that there aren't all these negative objections when buyers are coming through, but I realize that's not an option for everybody, and sometimes it doesn't have the best return, so talk to your realtor first. But if you do not plan to do the repairs, but there is an obvious repair needing to be done, get quotes for that work. Get it from the reputable contractors, get more than one, just so that when buyers are coming through, they have that information to make their decision. Buyers are far more concerned of the unknown than they are of the known. So if you have a scope of work saying this is what needs to be done and this is what it will cost, the unknown has completely been eliminated. I shouldn't say that. Of course, things can come up through the course of a project that you didn't anticipate, but in general, that really does help alleviate a lot of those concerns. And then you at least have a realistic number from your own side as well that you're working into your negotiations and into your pricing. Number 4, about pricing a home. I know this is all about pricing, but I just really want to stress the importance of setting the right price. I find a lot of the time that people think, well, if I list high, or at least for a price I really want to try for, what's the worst that can happen? I don't get offers and then I can reduce price. However, if you look at a graph over time, it's not this easy reduction with resultant sale. If you start price too high, it's almost like a step approach where you start too high, time passes, you reduce. Over time, what you're going to find though is those people end up selling their home for less than they would have if they would have priced properly from the onset. And there's a few reasons for that. The first couple weeks of a listing going live, that's when the bulk of your activity is. Buyers are excited about it. They are seeing traffic coming and going from it, other business cards popping up. They know they have to make a pretty quick decision and that they have to write a competitive offer because there's a lot of other buyers out there looking at it. Once a home has been on the market for some time, people start to think there's something wrong with it, that nobody wants it at this point, even if it was just a matter of pricing from the onset. And it becomes stale. You lose that interest. So people end up taking less because there's not as many buyers now looking at it, considering it. There's not that sense of urgency. And also because, quite frankly, sometimes sellers put themselves into desperate situations in which now they do have to negotiate. It's always best to try and get that home sold within the first 2 weeks of it going live. On the other hand, of course, I know this probably goes without saying, underpricing means you can leave money on the table. There is a fine balance of where you should be listing a home to optimize your sale price. Sometimes it can be a range. It depends on the area and the price point, but just talk to your realtor and find out what that realistic price is. And if you feel like your number is off from theirs, I really want you to dig a little bit deeper on pricing. Maybe it means getting another opinion of value, or maybe it even means just asking for a few more comps or giving it a bit more time to process the information. But pricing right from the outset is paramount to success. So number 5, this is kind of a little bit further now in the process. So you've picked your price, you've looked at the comps, you know the market, you're now on the market. How are things going is really the question. Now, when we're listing a home, it would not be advisable to list a home, and if you're getting a ton of traffic, to increase your list price. Perhaps in a situation like it's more advantageous to set up bidding war parameters. I don't know, it will depend on the situation and the advice of your realtor. However, what I will also say is be very sensitive to that feedback that is coming in. Sometimes that feedback is super helpful. They'll tell you if the home shows in a superior, inferior, or equal state to everything else that's out there on the market that they are touring. Sometimes they will comment on price. Sometimes you will see objections in that feedback that is indicative of them being deterred as a result of the price. So just being cognizant of that feedback makes a huge difference. And you don't necessarily want to be reactive to the feedback that's coming in, but there are proactive steps that you can take as a result of the feedback that comes in. Another thing to point out too is the market condition. A lot of the time markets can change if you're on the market for a period of time. So say you're going from a very strong market to a softer market, you might have to look at adjusting price even though it was okay when you started, or maybe even just a little bit high, and now you're really falling behind. I'm going to butcher it, but the Wayne Gretzky quote of "I don't shoot the puck to where the player is, I shoot the puck to where the player is going to be" is paramount in a situation like this. You don't necessarily want to price ahead of the market, but you don't want to be the laggard that is now pricing behind the market, because then your days on market are going to trend upward again and you're going to be getting lower prices. So step 6, kind of to that end, is also considering the seasonal influences. So spring is honestly our busiest time of year. We usually see the bulk of price increases happen in those early months of the year, and then the market kind of levels out and stays flat for the remainder of the year. Of course, we've had some very distinct exceptions in the last few years, but in general, that is the rule. But in spring and summer, typically as a result of the higher level of buyers out there, a more active buyer pool, we price slightly different and with different strategies versus in the winter months when things are perhaps a little bit slower. Still very serious buyers looking if they're looking out in the winter. However, there's fewer of them. Step number 7. So another thing you can do when you're trying to arrive at pricing yourself is utilizing some online tools. I know there are a few online websites that have really strived to make it in Winnipeg, similar to Zillow in the States. However, we're not there yet. There are a couple companies that will spit out property values, although I have checked them and they are all over the place, although I hear that the same can be said for Zillow in the States. But a tool I do really appreciate when I'm looking is the online property assessment tool from the city of Winnipeg. It will spit out numbers for you. Are they accurate? No. They are historically a little bit lower than what the homes are selling for, although not always. I've seen some that were off by in the high direction of 200,000. So you really never know. But at least looking at the specs of homes or looking at homes comparable to yours in that system can kind of give you an idea of where you stand in the market. But I will just drive home here, I hope that you should always be getting the opinion of a professional before you base anything on an online tool. These online tools do not take into account the nuances of any market. So just tread carefully here. Step number 8 on my list was having a negotiation strategy. But another key point of discussion in that conversation is what realistic negotiation expectations are. I know in Winnipeg right now, I usually give a percentage. This is what we're listing at. Expect a certain percentage from this list price, high or low, depending on what happens. So if there's a bidding war, it might be this percentage higher. If there's a lack of bidding and we're starting to really sit on the market as a result of our pricing, then expect this percentage lower. Always, of course, these are best guesses based on information and what we're seeing in the market. However, we can usually at least give a range of what a reasonable selling price is. But here's what's important about that. When you are hearing these numbers, some people have a bottom line that they must achieve, and setting a buffer in there to make sure that when an offer comes in, that the buyer can negotiate downward in a situation where we anticipate downward negotiation so that they feel like they can win is also part of the process. Game theory, I tell you, but sometimes for everybody to feel like they have won, anticipating some negotiation in there is paramount to your success. I know that sounds weird, but there is some strategy there to how we price in anticipation of negotiations. But there's also a fine line because, again, pricing too high might give the impression that you are unrealistic and not worth negotiating against. It really, I know I've said it like 3 times now, but I'll say it a fourth. It really is an art of knowing where to place that price. Step number 9 in your pricing strategy, although I've probably worked it in because I clearly do have a bias to many of these questions, is consulting with a realtor, and a realtor that works in the area, knows the market, knows the buyer pool in particular. That is seeing the homes, is in the trenches, because they know what buyers are willing to offer on and how much they're willing to pay for the various products out there. So definitely consult a realtor. They are in the thick of it. They do this every day. They know what they're doing. And there's no harm too in getting more than one opinion. In all honesty, I see no harm in getting 2-3 opinions. Even I find a lot of the time when I'm going in and pricing properties that it's not just myself, it might be another realtor or two, and we can have quite a spread. I will say I am pretty darn accurate in my pricing, so I'm pretty proud of that. I usually am batting right around 100%, but you just never know, right? But having realistic expectations from the onset is paramount to success, and honestly, getting a realtor in there to set those realistic expectations is so important. So those are my 9 factors to consider when pricing a home. Is there anything you feel that I've missed? If so, be sure to leave it in the comment section below. I am always reading those comments, appreciating all you guys watching. Even though my setup has not been great the last little bit, but thank you so much for continuing to watch. And be sure to like this video if you found value in the content today, and subscribe to our channel. We have a ton of stuff coming up in the next few months, so I want you guys all to see it. And in closing too, if there's anything that has come across in this video, I really just hope it's that a well-priced home attracts the most amount of buyers and leads to the most seamless and flawless sale possible. So pricing is so paramount to your strategy. Again, thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.